welcome to the first edition of the Indian Nation Station pregame show. I'm your host, the bald and beautiful AJ Ganger, along with the coach, Brian Gillespie, and now Ryan Branscombe joining us this week as well. Well, guys, tonight it's the home opener for the Indians as we host West Carrollton. Let's go ahead and take a look at our remaining schedule here. We've got West Carrollton this week, the 138th meeting against Troy next week on September 2nd. And then we are at Xenia on the 9th. We play Sydney here at home on the 16th. We're at Fairborn on the 23rd. Greenville, we host them here for homecoming on the 30th. October 7th, we start at Tipp City. October 14th at Butler, and we close the regular season out with Stebbins. Guys, what are some of your thoughts on this remaining schedule for our Indians?
I'll tell you what, you're going to look at September 2nd and September 9th as really the guts of the schedule. I think that's going to decide where the season is headed, at least when it comes to conference-wise, because I think Troy and Xenia, who happen to be playing this week, are probably the two best teams other than Piqua in this conference on either side. And I think back-to-back weeks early in the season, those games are huge. At Xenia team at home, you know, they're going to be feeling comfortable, the younger team that they are, in their own place. That's going to be a tough road trip for the Indians this year.
Ryan, what are your thoughts?
Looking at the remaining schedule, I look down at when we play local Tipp City and Butler. What's Tipp City going to be doing? Because Butler came out and was getting throttled against Northmont last week, and so it's going to be a test at the late half of the season. Where are we going to be at? But the Battle of the Miami is always going to be, it's going to be the tail of the tape of this, MVL season, because I think they're going to be the 1 and 2. I think that's where we're going to finish at. 1 and 2 this year is going to be Troy, either us or Troy this year. So that's my take on it. But Tipp City, Butler, MVL looks to be tough this year.
Yeah, I think so too. Brian and I were talking beforehand how Troy and Xenia are going to probably be those two games. And then you never know when it comes to a Tipp City playing on the road, or that Stebbins game could be pretty sneaky too here at home as well. Guys, let's take a look at the scores from around the Miami Valley League last week. Stebbins beat Aiken 15-0. Tipp City pulled out the win on Bellbrook 14-10. Troy beats Dunbar 56-24. Tecumseh beats Fairborn 48-13. Bell Fountain with the W over Sydney 43-13. Miamisburg beats West Carrollton 62-26. Northmont beats Butler 49-13. Xenia beats Beaver Creek 40-3. Eaton with the 44-13 win over Greenville, and again Piqua with the 55-0 win over Belmont. Guys, any surprises from last week that you want to mention?
I'll tell you what, if you look at that Stebbins-Aiken game, I don't know that it's a surprise, but there's some eye-popping stats from that. Aiken recorded -3 yards in the game, and they got 1 first down. Now, they only ended up playing 3 quarters of football, but holy macro, it's either Stebbins is the incredible defense or Aiken is incredibly bad. But to get -3 total yards in 3 quarters of football, that's pretty bad. And then you look at the Tipp Bellbrook game. Both teams kind of rebuilding a little bit. Tipp only coming in there with 6 returning starters. They managed to beat Bellbrook, so that might give them the lift they need to get their season on the rails and headed in the right direction. But they are pretty young outside of Peronsky at quarterback, so that's a pretty eye-popping win for them. They got that big dub. And then you got Troy, first game with the wing tee, threw the ball 1 time, put up 56 points on Dunbar.
That was crazy.
But giving up 24 points to Dunbar as well,
yes.
Dayton City School. So what's that say about Troy's defense? So the thing, the game that pops out to me is who we play this week is West Carrollton. My alma mater, the Miamisburg Vikings, where I did graduate from, giving up 26 points to West Carrollton late there in that game, that might have been some, a lower underclassmen playing, but still giving up 26 points to West Carrollton. So we'll see what West Carrollton brings this week.
And Brian and I were talking about that West Carrollton game too as well, that it seemed like, Miamisburg did give up 26 points to West Carrollton, but their quarterback threw the ball 32 times. Now, he wasn't very efficient, as Brian mentioned, 15 of 32, but he still threw for over 250 yards and 3 touchdowns. So, I mean, that's going to be, like Brian said, our secondary will be tested.
Well, their quarterback, he's not super accurate. His name's Logan Cloyd, but he is like a truck. And if you try, he's going to run through you. He's not going to run around you. He's going to go right at you, at your body. And if you don't tackle well, which I think in times last game against Belmont even, I think Piqua struggled tackling the ball carrier. You know, there were arm tackles. There were probably 3 or 4 missed tackles occasionally on a down. If you don't tackle that guy, he's 6'3", 235. Well, he's going to have a big game, and this game is going to be a lot closer than people expect.
You know, you think about missed tackles, too. Bill Neese said on the coaches show this week that they had 9 missed tackles on 2 plays. One play they had 4, one play they had 5. So that you just can't have that happen.
And that's where I was going with it, too. AJ, watching back to the coaches show where Bill did talk about that, Coach Neese, where there was that many missed tackles on 2 plays. It's just a matter of, you know, wrapping up and finishing the tackles, you know. So I think it's going to be a test this week, definitely against a very, very stout, team like West Carrollton. So
let's get into some of the numbers from last week's scrimmage win against, no, I'm just kidding. It was a regular season win against Belmont, 55-0. Brady Uhl was 7 of 8 passing for 55 yards and a touchdown. Sam Schmeezing was the leading rusher with 6 carries, 67 yards and a touchdown. Bryson Roberts had 4 carries for 20 yards on 2 touchdowns, and Deshaun Roberts had the 98-yard touchdown to open up that second half. We had 173 total yards of offense to Belmont's 32. Belmont had 0, count them 0, passing attempts for 0 yards. All of Belmont's yards came on the ground.
Well, it didn't show up in the stats. They did throw the ball once, and it was incomplete. But they definitely did not gain any yards. But, you know, it's so hard to look at those stats and get anything from them.
Yes.
Because you're playing, 173 total yards doesn't seem like a lot, but they were with the short field all night long on a block punt, a great punt return, this and that. It was too easy against a Belmont team that was obviously overwhelmed, undermanned, and you just don't know what you get from that. I do know that I saw some great things from Sam Schmeezing. He looked great out of the backfield. He hit that hole and he went hard and he went quick. And I think that he's probably going to earn himself some more carries each week.
Yes.
I think Bryson and him will be a nice pairing in the backfield there. And Deshaun Roberts, electric, 98-yard touchdown, punt, kickoff return. I mean, there aren't too many guys, even against a team like Belmont, that can do that. That doesn't even count his great punt returning. And he just set the table for the Piqua offense to just pick Belmont apart. They didn't need the table set. They could have eat with plastic forks and paper plates. But
I agree.
He set the table for them, and they did the rest.
Yeah, and Piqua only had 2 third downs in the entire game, and they were 2 for 2. You don't see that very often in any level.
Very, very offensively efficient. When they had the short field, like Brian was talking about, they very, very efficient offensively. Schmeezing, averaging basically 11 yards a carry right there. So, offensively, running the ball is going to be key, and it's going to be key to consistency for this Piqua offense.
At this time, we'd like to go ahead and thank all of our sponsors for the 2022-23 school year. Kathy Henney, Little Caesars, Teach Tech Productions, which is Ryan over here, Buffalo Wings and Rings, Dick Lumpkins, This and That's Candy on Main, Harmony Systems, Craix Corp, Edison State Community College, Dr. Little John Morris Comfort Systems, and we have one more coming on the way, so be on the lookout for that one. Again, thanks to all of those people supporting the Indian Nation Station and Piqua Athletics for the 22-23 school year. Guys, it's time to take a look at Week 2. It's hard to believe we're already in Week 2 already of high school football action. We got 1-0 Tip City traveling to the 0-1 Sydney Yellow Jackets. Troy 1-0 hosting Xenia 1-0. Butler 0-1 travels to Fairborn, who was also 0-1. Greenville 0-1 hosts Stebbins. And obviously our game here tonight with West Carrollton playing the Piqua Indians. We talked earlier, guys, it looks like Troy Xenia is probably the best matchup this week.
It'll be interesting to see how Xenia does in the trenches because, again, playing against the wing tee is different than anything else you see every year. And that's been an advantage for teams that run that, as Edgewood did last year against us in the playoffs. And that if you can do something different than everybody else does against teams that aren't used to playing against that's very difficult to handle. And I don't know that Xenia will have the guys to totally slow down the running game of Troy. But if you look at it the other side of that, Xenia is probably going to put some points up.
Yes.
Because I think they've got a pretty good offense. They're going to be able to put the ball in the end zone some. So that one, really, if you're looking at it on paper, looks like it's going to be quite a game.
Yeah. Ryan, what are your thoughts on the games this week around the league?
Definitely agree. The Troy Xenia game, a wing tee offense, you must be disciplined on defense. Completely disciplined. Know your assignments. Know your gaps. And, the terminology that comes to mind is you got to butt press, read, rip. And you got to know that on the defensive line. You're going to know what's coming. Is it going to be trap? Are we going power? Are we going counter? Your linebackers for Troy, for Xenia, are going to be the ones that are going to have to play discipline when they're scraping in that linebacker position. So I'm interested to see what happens that first half in that Troy Xenia game, because that's going to be the tail of the take for the Troy and Xenia game. That is the eye catcher. That is, for me, the game of the week that I'm going to be keeping my eye on.
The other game I think that we should keep our eye on is two young teams in Tip and Sydney playing there. Yeah. Sydney took a loss last week, but I think they've got 8 returners. Tip had 6 returning players. So it'll be interesting to watch those teams as they go forward and see how they match up against each other this week, because I don't know that Tip's win over Bellbrook, if after you watch Bellbrook go forward, if that's going to play out as a great win or just a team that's totally reloading at this point. So Tip versus Sydney, I think, is really the only other game you really want to keep your eye on this week, to kind of keep an eye on Tip. Is Tip going to be that team by the end of the year that they're going to challenge Piqua, or are they just going to kind of go in between and be somewhere midland in the conference?
We'll have to wait and see on that one. I just want to remind everybody here before we get into tonight's ball game between Piqua and West Carrollton that all sporting events this season filmed by us are on a delayed broadcast and will be available immediately following the game. So immediately following the conclusion of Friday night's game, that game will be on our YouTube page ready to go for replay. Guys, let's get into tonight's game with a closer look here. Piqua's win last week extends their regular season win streak to 17. The last time Piqua and West Carrollton played, though, was in 2019, with West Carrollton actually upsetting us 39-34. 2 years is a very long time to wait to get revenge on anybody. And tonight the Indians are looking to get that revenge in their 18th straight regular season victory and the second of the season. Brian, I know that you have a little bit more knowledge on what we can look forward to here for West Carrollton, and then we'll get Ryan's take as well.
Well, I'll tell you what. It's almost, it's 2 seasons, but it's almost been 3 years since these two teams have met. And I'll tell you, one person who does not forget that game is Bill Neese.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And that one has been stewing and eating him up for 3 years. If you're a coach, you don't forget things. You kind of forget some of your wins, but when it's the losses, you don't ever forget those losses, especially one like that 39-34 loss at West Carrollton was a stunner. That was not expected. I think maybe they overlooked it a little bit, and I will guarantee you there will be no overlooking this week.
No.
But I will also tell you West Carrollton is not a pushover. They've got a new coach. He's coming in, former Cincinnati Hughes coach Chris Mobley's bringing he brought a little juice to the table for West Carrollton last week. The video I watched, they had full stands for that Miamisburg-West Carrollton game. And while that is a rivalry, as Ryan knows, big rivalry, probably there was some shine off that rivalry over the years. But I think people are excited for West Carrollton now. I think you'll probably see some people travel to Piqua tomorrow or today and for the game. And Chris Mobley has people excited. The Dayton Jefferson graduate, so he's a local guy. He's coming back this direction. He actually had a great career at Hughes. He just decided to walk away from Hughes. Went kind of on top. In 2019 they were 7-3. That's the best record they've ever had. So it's not going to be as easy as everybody might think. They run a spread offense. Piqua's going to be in a situation where they might be thin on the cornerback situation. We were not sure about that, but they run some intricate design plays. So Miamisburg, they moved the ball a little bit against Miamisburg last week. Miamisburg's a good G-Walk team, and if Piqua, which I guarantee you will not overlook West Carrollton, fans and broadcasters might tend to do that more than they are, but I know Bill Neese won't overlook it.
No, he won't. And the one thing that we talk about all the time is West Carrollton's offense this year is more predicated off of a Cincinnati-based school's offense. And we've seen, we've played 2-3 Cincinnati teams over the last few years, and we've seen those offenses. Do you think us having that experience against those offenses will help our defense?
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of what teams run is the RPO, the run-pass option when you're running out of the spread. So, a lot of that is going to be a tale for the secondary for Piqua this year is going to be when these teams run wide open, can they run man-to-man? Can these corners stay up with these wide receivers and these H-backs out of the backfield? Can they stay up? Can these linebackers keep up? It's going to be a big question mark. Can they keep up with these spread teams? Especially if you run a West Coast style of spread offense where it's one read and throw. So a lot of that's going to be, tackling is going to be a big key in space. You're going to have to tackle in space, and these guys are going to have to wrap and run.
Yeah. And Brian, he was talking about keeping up. I do think our offense has the weapons, though, to keep up with just about any team.
Oh, certainly. I think West Carrollton's defense is going to be on their heels a lot. They have some solid players, but I don't know that they have enough, on the defensive side to stop Piqua. Piqua just picks you apart. You watched it against Belmont. You didn't see a ton of, hey, we're going 60 yards and fire. It's
right.
hit the tight end, hit the guy out of the hit Mickey Anderson coming out of the slot, and he'll do the rest. I mean, they can throw deep, but against teams like this, you might just be able to get 15, 20 yards a pop until you're in the end zone, and other teams like, we're down 21-0. What are we going to do?
Right.
So I think that West Carrollton gave up a lot of yards and a lot of points, almost 600 yards of offense to Miamisburg last week. That's going to be a problem playing Piqua because Piqua, to me, has one of the best wide receiving cores they've had since I've been here, and that's 8 years. And I think it's going to be hard for their defense, just like it's going to occasionally will be hard for Piqua's defense to match up in a spread set.
The other stat, too, that I kind of always look at is turnover differential. And over the past 2 years, Piqua's turnover differential has been insanely good. We haven't turned the ball over. We're getting turnovers with our defense. I mean, that's probably one of the biggest stats.
And that comes from a 3-year continuous starter.
Yes.
He's 3 years now starting at the helm at quarterback for Piqua and Bill Neese. That's where we kind of had that conversation before the game last week where we talked, when's the last time Bill Neese and the Piqua Indians have had a 3-year consecutive starter? So we talked a little about that, but that's taking care of the football, not turning it over in the red zone, and making sure that we score when you have when you make that drive, you got to finish it. You got to drive when you drive down the field. You got to finish that drive. Go ahead,
One
Brian.
note: they only had 2 players, Piqua, that have ever played against West Carrollton left on the roster. One of those is Brady Ohl, and they only played part-time in that game. So not a lot of these kids remember that game. Probably a good thing.
Yes.
But I'll tell you, Bill Neese has probably had that thing splattered all over the locker room. He may even showed them the video from the game this week. Hey, guys, this is what happened last time. You better not let it happen again.
All right, guys, before we get off here, what are your final thoughts or maybe some keys going into the game? We'll start with Ryan.
I think it's going to come down to starting fast. Piqua Indians are going to have to start fast. I think they're going to have to tackle right away. That's going to be probably an emphasis this week in practice, Bill. Tackling, starting fast on offense, and eliminating turnovers and finishing drives.
Brian.
I think for me, on top of everything else, is the difference in special teams. West Carrollton last week struggled getting punts off. It was a little bit of a mess with what they were doing. Piqua, discipline, great kicker. Trombley is amazing. Flips the field every single time. And then you've got a Drayshawn Roberts returning kicks. I mean, I think if it came down to a close game, which I don't know that it will, Piqua has a huge advantage in special teams, and that would put them over the top.
Tremblay did get a bomb sticker this week as well for having that hit on the kickoff, and I believe he's the first ever kicker to receive a bomb sticker.
Amazing.
That
was a hit. That was a hit of a lifetime. He had that on Twitter in 5 seconds.
He did. Right when the game ended. Well, thank you, gentlemen, again for joining us for another edition of the Indian Nation Station pregame show. Brian and Tom Michaels will have the call of the game tonight. Guys, thank you again. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. Go Piqua, beat West Carrollton.